Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Real Reefing TV, where I discuss my real experiences in the hobby, give you guys real knowledge that you can apply to your reefs. And today we're gonna be talking about fish food. The main goal is to get your fish fat and healthy. And if you stick through this video, you're gonna learn how to feed your fish with minimal waste so that most of that food goes in your fish's belly. You're gonna learn about what your fish like to eat, how often to feed them, what types of food to feed them, and finally some tools of the trade again so that most of your food gets in your fish's belly. I'm also going to share with you guys a couple of ways and some bonus tips at the end of the video to save money on the food that you're feeding your fish without skipping out on quality. There's 4 main food types out there that you guys can feed your fish. Number 1 is flake food, just like this. You see in here, just like that, flake food. Second type is pellet food. This comes in a pelletized form. You have frozen food. And then finally, we have some sheet algae. We're gonna go over what fish like to eat, what types of food, how to feed those types of foods. Again, some tools of the trade so that you guys can feed your fish effectively and how often to feed them. So as I mentioned before, there's quite a few different types of food that you can feed. So it's difficult to know what food you should have and when you should feed it. I like to have it all. I like to have flake, I like to have sheet algae, I like to have frozen food and pellets, because different types of fish like to eat different types of food, and it's good to have those different types in your arsenal so that when you do bring a new fish into your home, that you have some food that it's easily adaptable to. I'll tell you, one of the most easily adaptable foods is flake food, mainly because it's once it hits the water, it softens up, it's easy for them to digest, and it's packed with a lot of flavor. It's very easy to feed. This is one of my foods. This is spirulina 20. And this is more of an algae-based flake food. I also have some cholera. And then I also have some of this omega-1 marine flakes with garlic in them. Flake food is very easy to feed. You just grab a pinch and pop it in the tank, and your tank mates will go up and start grabbing at it at the top. One trick I like to do is to take a pinch and hold it under the water, and your fish will come up and become accustomed to eating right out of your hand. So I think that's pretty cool. Flake food's also great because the smaller fish in your system are more apt to eating it. A lot of times when we buy pellets, unless we buy really small pellets, those smaller fish in our tank aren't able to really get them in their mouth. So for instance, like chromis are a big example of that. I also have had small clownfish that weren't able to eat some of the pellets that I had, but flake food did perfectly. So I found an all-around good flake food to feed my fish. Another reason why flake food is great is that it floats around your tank. It's easily blown around by your power heads. I do not shut my power heads off when I'm feeding my tank because I want the entire system to be able to be fed. I want, if one fish is on this side of the tank and I'm feeding on this side of the tank, I want every fish to be able to eat, even the ones that stay on the rocks. So you'll notice like hawkfish, for instance, or gobies will stay near the sand bed or near the rock work. And so if you have the fish food floating all around your tank, it's more easily picked up by them. So let's move on to pellet food. Pellet food is great because it minimizes waste. With flake food, you can't have a lot of waste. A lot of it can go over the drains. I have some tips for you guys to be able to minimize that. But with pellet food, as long as you can get it to sink, again, that same trick, grab a pinch of it and dip it down into the water with your fingers and release it from there slowly. Watch your fish eat it as it's sinking to the bottom, and as long as it's not hitting the bottom, you're doing pretty good and your fish are eating all of the food. So you're minimizing waste there. Pellet food is also very nutritionally dense, so they're getting a lot of food for the pellet or the size of the food that they're eating, as opposed to frozen food, which is pretty nutritionally not dense or light. I don't know. But anyways, frozen food like this. I bought this at I just bought this at a local fish store. So frozen food comes in frozen. So you can either get it in a sheet like this, or you can get it in little blocks, in little cubes that you can pop out into some type of container to thaw it out in. I keep a cup up in my canopy for when I want to feed frozen, but frozen food is great for finicky eaters or for fish that you're trying to acclimate to your system. Maybe you've got them in your hospital or your quarantine tank. It's pretty palatable. It's got a nice texture for them, so they tend to go after it. And it's a little bit more natural looking for them to go after. So if you're having trouble getting your fish to eat, frozen food is a great place to start. I will tell you though that frozen food is a little bit more time consuming to feed. That's why I don't feed it as much on my tank. So I mainly stick with sheet algae, flake food, and pellets. I do sometimes go ahead and thaw out some treats for them every now and then. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this back in the freezer, and it'll come back out when we talk about how to feed. Gotta keep it frozen. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about sheet algae. Sheet algae or nori or seaweed or whatever you want to call it is basically seaweed from the ocean that's been dried and put in it's been kind of flattened out into a sheet and then dried out. So this is some two little fishies, sea veggies. I like these because of the packaging they come in. Also, you get a pretty good bang for your buck in here, and it's pretty high quality nori. You'll see this is only half of what came in this package. And I'll throw a link in the description below on where you can get this. But what I like to do is I like to take a sheet, and I'll typically take a whole little stack of them, cut them in half. But I'll take a sheet and cut it in half. And there I have about what I'll feed in one day. Typically I like to either throw a sheet like this in the morning, and I'll fold it up just like so, throw it in my veggie clip, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment, but I'll throw it in my veggie clip and let my tangs tear at it all day long. All right, so sheet algae would be mainly for your veggie eating fish like tangs, angels, gobies, some gobies, not all of them though, and snails, and some of your cleanup crew I'm sure will go ahead and nibble a little bit at your algae. It's not a bad idea to keep them alive, especially if you don't have much algae on your rocks. So supplement with some sheet algae. Pro tip, if you want to make sure that your tangs keep their aggression down, make sure that you keep plenty of this sheet algae on hand and feed it religiously 1 to 2 times a day. That will keep their aggression down because they are herbivores, and that's their main diet. So if you're feeding them a lot of just frozen food like mysis shrimp or something like that, they're going to become a bit more aggressive and kind of irritated. So best off to make sure that you're feeding them what is in their natural diet, which is seaweed. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to feed. Now this is important because we don't want to overfeed our systems and pollute our tank, but we also want to get nice, fat, healthy fish. So what we're going to do is we're going to feed as often as you can, up to like 3 times a day. So, I'm working throughout most of the day. So typically I might I'll try to throw a sheet of algae in the morning before I leave for work. And then when I get home, I'll throw a sheet of algae in, and I'll also give my fish a nice healthy dosing of flake food because it's easy for me to feed right before dinner. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and, you know what? Let me show you something. All right guys, so check it out. This is my feeding ring. This is what I feed my fish in every day. This is right over the edge of the tank, so it's very easily accessible, because I'll tell you something, if it's not easy to do, you probably won't do it. So what I do is I just bloop, go ahead and dump that right in. You see what's great about that is it keeps the food in the ring and in the tank. It doesn't let it flow out and down the overflow. So now we'll watch as it pulls down in. Now I will tell you this, guys, these fish, oh, here they come. It's a little late-night snack. Look at that orange shoulder tank flexing. Sorry guys, I get geeked out about my fish. At any rate, that feeding ring is fantastic. Right here is my veggie clip. It is held on by a magnet, so it will, go ahead and move wherever I need it to. And that comes in really handy. That magnet is super strong. I tell you, I don't use the Two Little Fishies magnet that comes on the back of it. That is a Two Little Fishies veggie clip. And up here is my Two Little Fishies feeding ring. Comes in super handy. Would definitely recommend getting this for you guys. And like I said, I'll throw a link in the comment below. All right, so you've gotten a couple tools of the trade. One of them is the Two Little Fishies feeding ring. That feeding ring floats, and then it has a magnet on the other side of it so that you can position it wherever you need to. So if you want to position it under an automatic feeder, you could do that. Which brings me to my next tool of the trade, which is an automatic feeder. Automatic feeders are great for when you're going out of town. It's a little bit less personal, I feel, to the fish, but hey, when you're out of town, you gotta do what you gotta do to keep your fish fed. I would mainly use pellets in an automatic feeder with all of the same size pellets. And that'll help it run more efficiently so that you can fine tune it and get the right amount out of the automatic feeder that you need. The third tool of the trade would be the Two Little Fishies veggie clip, which is perfect for bringing all the way up to the top, removing it, folding up your algae, putting that in there, and then moving it back down to where your fish can. All right, so finally, I mentioned to you at the beginning of this video that I had some tips for you guys to save money on the fish food that you guys are getting, and how to not skip out on the quality. Well, I'll tell you, it's to go to frag swaps and trade shows. Figure out, look in your local, reef club and figure out what is going on in your area. I'll tell you one big thing that's happening in our area, and I think like 9 days, is Reefapalooza down in Orlando. I'm near Tampa, Florida. So Reefapalooza is, I think, April 7th through the 8th. I'm super excited to go. I'm only gonna go one day, but I'm super excited. We've gone the last 2 years and I've had a lot of fun. You can get a lot of free food and free samples there. Not free food for you, free food for the fish. But you can get some free samples there. For instance, I'll tell you, look at this. How about that? This is from a year ago. It's still okay. It's still coming. I still got more. I got more, and I got a whole bag in there. I've got so much fish food, I don't even know what to do with it. I got 5 of these last year. They just loaded them up on you. They're like, here's a whole stack of them. Take as many as you want. I'm like, fantastic. These are great. So, I got 3 of these last time. So there's a lot of free food that you can get when you go to the trade shows. So definitely go to the trade shows. I'm hoping to get some footage for you guys, so you can hopefully see that coming up very soon. You guys want to save money on fish food and you're buying frozen fish food, stop buying the little cube, okay? You're wasting your money on it. Buy a sheet like this. It comes in a thin pack. Paid $14 for this entire sheet, which includes 16 ounces. Typically, you would pay about $11 for a 4-ounce pack that has cubes. So you're wasting money on the fact that it comes in cubes. So what I would recommend doing is buy a pack like this, and then what you'll do is you'll open it up every now and then when you need to, when you kind of run out of your little stash, and break off a good little chunk of it, and then break it off in your own little pieces. And I've already done this. I've got a few pieces left. Throw it in a Ziploc freezer bag, throw it in your freezer with the package of the frozen food. And then when you're ready to use it, you unzip it. It's all, still frozen in its individual little spots, and you can throw it in a cup, throw it in some of your salt water, and feed it from there. Hey, listen guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate the time that you took to up your fish feeding game. And if you have any great tips or maybe some food that you really like to feed, drop it down in the comments below. I'd love to see it. Maybe I'll give it a try. And then finally, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can see all of the new videos coming out. Thanks a lot. I'm out.